as objectified masses. Yeah? And of course, it's easier to control a population through their minds than with military control. And actually objectivity becomes... Now this is not to say that we don't need objectivity, because that would be like saying we don't need a left brain. We do need a left brain. But we do not need objective narratives to dominate other political narratives. That's not democracy. Yeah? So we kind of, and also we get into spiritual matters here, because those of us who are religious, who have a God or a faith, we tend to put our God into the realm of spiritual objectivity. And it's so in a way, objectivity is a worthy aspiration. Some of the BBC foreign correspondents that I've interviewed for my PhD research, who are objective, who claim to be objective, they're highly intelligent people. There's no, but we all have an unconscious bias. Yeah? It's when we think we have the truth that we are most inflexible and not listening to other people. In a bit like me giving this lecture now. If I'm just giving this lecture and saying, my God, I've got all the truth here, here it is, take it away. That's really stupid. That's not truth. Truth is listening to you, thinking about what I'm thinking, and back again. It's a conversation. It's never finished. It's open. You know? Does that answer the question? Yeah. Kind of. Anybody else? If it's clear, I must have done something wrong.
I do have a question, but I think it's we didn't have enough time to answer it. But like you mentioned something, this is not democracy. But why are we using democracy as a model? Is it actually a successful model to refer to?
Well, that's really a kind of a political question.
Yeah.
But I think it's worth saying that, well, I think in a way, partly the answer to that is what's happening in the world already. So I don't know whether most of you would agree, but I think there is certainly those of you who are studying international relations will know that there's a kind of shift in power from the West to the non-West. And so if you take the United Nations is basically controlled and dominated by the winners of the Second World War, who were, China and Russia and the West, right? It's a top-down process, but it's not democratic. If countries like South Africa and Brazil and the so-called BRICS countries, so that's Brazil, Russia, India, China, and that's it, isn't it? South Africa. If those countries are now becoming more powerful, and they represent collectively much more wealth and human population than the West is now in the minority. So, ironically, arguably, if the West is losing power, why do you think America's collapsing and behaving so strangely? Because its left brain is going crazy. Yeah? Is because there is a kind of potentially a democratic opening in the non-West. Now, when I say that, I'm also painfully aware that in China and Russia and India, things are not necessarily looking very democratic, are they?
Yeah.
So, where do we look for our model of democracy? Any suggestions? Pardon? We're doomed. Don't say that. We're never doomed. You know, there was a time when kings and queens ruled the world. They don't anymore. And the reason why is because of the French Revolution. And the French Revolution took place because people didn't say we're doomed. They went into the streets and they changed it. And so we just, as Stuart Hall says, we have to look for pockets of resistance that. And okay, so what would Stuart Hall say? Black Lives Matter, environmental movements, Palestinian movements, all of these feminist movements, Me Too movement, actually, when you think about all these interesting movements that are trying to operate democratically, yes, they have something in common. They're understanding the world in a more complex way, and they're acting within the context. So the right brain is all about context. It's about specific. So truth is local. Truth is not something that's everywhere at the same time. It never is. If you look at evolution, if you look at the way life works on this planet and over generations, there's an asymmetry, as McGilchrist would call it, an asymmetry to the way evolution is crazy. It just tries things, and it's not perfect. It's not. I don't want to offend anyone, but in my view, I'm kind of spiritual, but I don't think it's God's design. I don't think that God just said, but there is something that beautiful and awesome about the way life is and the way life evolves that makes me and presumably you feel spiritual. Is that a religious feeling? Maybe, but as soon as the spiritual in the right brain gets translated into power in the left brain, what do we have? Christian Zionism, which is now running the White House, which is now calling the shots in Palestine. So, anyway, I'm getting a bit political. So let's stay. The thing I like about McGilchrist is that he's relatively neutral politically. He's not a mad Marxist, and he's not a mad conservative or fascist or whatever you want to call it, neoliberal. How are we doing for time? How are we doing, cameraman, camerawoman?
50 minutes.
I think we're good, aren't we? I think we've probably done it. So can I recommend that you all watch the McGilchrist video on ways of attending before next seminar? Yeah? I've also put some questions on the McGilchrist text on Moodle. You may have seen them already, so take a look at those. And we'll see what happens next week. And feel free to share any ideas. If you're over this weekend, if something happens in the media or you watch something, you think, oh, that really reminds me of what we were talking about, post it on Moodle and we can all share it, right? Let's do that. Okay. Thank you very much. I want to talk to the ELAS students, so don't run away.